Welcome to Sunshine Cathedral's Queer God Squad. It's Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. I'm Reverend Dr. Darrell Watkins, the senior minister here at Sunshine Cathedral.
I am Reverend Dr. Robert Griffin, the executive minister. Faith and religion can be complicated for the LGBTQ+ community. Surveys show that evangelical faith is the justification for the greatest attacks on the LGBTQ+ community.
I am Reverend Kevin Tisdall, the Minister of Education. The Queer God Squad is going to explore our religious community. Let's explore the big news of the day and what it means to you.
I am Reverend Dr. Ann Atwell, the Minister of Connections. This is live, and then we are available on demand. If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Join the conversation on your favorite streaming platform and social media.
At Sunshine Cathedral, we're here to tell you that you are God's miracle, not God's mistake. This is the Sunshine Cathedral perspective. Could Trump's Christian nationalism end America as we know it? As the 2024 election nears, Donald Trump's campaign is intensifying its focus on the so-called culture wars, issues God, gays, gates, and guns. God, gays, gates, and guns. Reflecting a broader patriarchal and Christian nationalist agenda. This agenda continues to perpetuate the foundational principles of white supremacy and patriarchal control that have historically shaped the U.S. At a recent panel on white Christian nationalism, Sara Moslener of Central Michigan University discussed how concepts like innocence and purity culture, central to Christian nationalism, are used to maintain a sense of white male-dominated supremacy and societal control. These ideas are rooted in colonial history and are increasingly reflected in modern attempts to restrict discussions on race, sexuality, and gender in schools and public discourse. In this context, Donald Trump's rhetoric against immigrants, especially from Muslim majority and Latin American countries, underscores a broader campaign of xenophobia. His derogatory comments and policies reflect a desire to reinforce a nativist and exclusionary agenda, countering the contributions immigrants make to American society. Trump's comments on Kamala Harris focus on "she just became black," and his comments at the National Black Journalists Association seem to prove these growing concerns. The persistence of these issues underscores a critical examination of whether America's democratic values can withstand the pressures of this ideological shift. As the 2024 election approaches, the nation must confront whether such a political agenda could fundamentally alter the country's social and political landscape. Are the 4 Gs, God, gays, gates, and guns, unconditionally linked? I grew up in the Mid-South, in the Bible Belt, in the hills of Arkansas, and the fundamentalists and evangelicals were everywhere. Even if you weren't part of that church, of that tradition, it was in the water. It was all the ads on the radio, all the billboards, 2/3 of your friends. It was just everywhere. A church on every corner, and they had their signs with their little slogans. So it was in the air you breathed. You couldn't get away from it. And one thing I heard my entire childhood, young adulthood, in fact, until I left the region, was this constant call for revival. America needs revival. We need revival. And churches would have revival services every year. They'd last a week, sometimes 2 weeks. They'd have guest ministers. And they'd go into the night. They'd raise a lot of money. They'd pass the plate every time. And you go, even if you went to this church, you go to this church's revival because it was just so exciting to hear the evangelists and all this, whatever. And then the church would get all excited. And then they'd have some programs that would go on for months and months after that because they got all revived. And if this just happened all over the country, then America was going to get saved. America was going to be all right. That was all very frightening because it seemed like a sort of a mind control thing. If we can all worship the same God and have the same beliefs and the same prejudices and the same fears and the same values, then we'll all be the same. And then Stepford America will be God's favorite. And that's what they were pushing. And I never bought into it, except now when I see this, I'm like, we need a revival. But we don't need a revival of racism. We've been having that since for always. Mm-hmm. What we need is a revival of empathy. We need a revival of conscience. We need a revival of kindness. We need a revival of compassion. We need a revival of justice love, of restorative justice, not retributive justice, but restorative justice, justice that, yes, holds people accountable, but also helps them heal and rehabilitate and become better people than they knew they could be. We need a revival, not a revival of a religious sect, not a revival of any one person's theology. We need a revival of humanity. We need a humanism revival. And churches can certainly be part of it, but it doesn't need to be restricted to them. We need a revival where when someone says, well, she used to be Indian, but now all of a sudden she's black, someone needs to look into that, that we scoff at that immediately, that we call that like, what kind of craziness are you talking about? The vice president has forever been biracial. We've always known that she has an Indian mother and a Caribbean father. And as is the case, I know a lot of biracial people, and they usually identify with the culturally more interesting of their parents. So every person I know who has black and white parents, I don't know one of them who calls themselves white. They call themselves black. They identify with the culturally rich, with the one that could be overlooked or discriminated against or reviled or whatever. They sort of identify with that, mostly because they often wouldn't have a choice. Because if you look a certain way, they're gonna call you that anyway. They're gonna call you that anyway. So Kamala, and I believe she told the story that her mother encourages. I don't know, but in any case, she did when she ran years ago for an office. Said that she made it a choice, and I really believe her mother encouraged her to do this, to choose. Like, you have two identities, two cultures to choose from, but you can't live two lives at the same time. You're going to need to say, this is how I'm going to live. This is what I'm going to step into. This is what I want to identify. And she chose, like, she went to Howard University. Like, she has identified as African American for always. And we know that she's more than that. President Obama had an African father and a white Kansan mother. I never heard him identify as white or anyone call him white. He was identified as black because he presents as black. That he has those traits. So that she calls herself black, one, she gets to, and two, we know that she's multicultural, but still, because we like labels and binaries, we almost insist that people choose a thing and say, this is what I am. And second of all, what does that have to do with the price of eggs? Yeah. It matters to a racist who all he can do is insult people and label people and try to create divisions, but that he said she was a little bit older than he expected her to be. Like, even in that, like, he's like, oh, turns out black don't crack. I mean, he can't say anything without just being ridiculous and stupid, right? So that he never mentions that this woman is an attorney. He's not an attorney. No. That this woman has a doctor of jurisprudence. He doesn't have a doctor of anything. No. Took him 3 or 4 tries at several schools to get his one little Wharton degree that you can't see the transcripts of because they will be embarrassing. So he doesn't mention that she's a legal scholar, that she's been a district attorney, she's been an attorney general, she's a serving vice president. When people say, well, what's she done? Well, when has she stopped doing any? I mean, she's been busy since we've known her name. And so, but he brings it around to race. I don't know what kind of race she is. Well, then stupid you, because everybody else knows. The world knows her story. And how embarrassing that a 34-time convicted criminal would sit there and what he has to say to black journalists is, suddenly she's black.
And
he should have been laughed out of the room that moment, but he still got support.
Yeah.
He's got support. You couldn't be a person of color with a speeding ticket and have a chance in this country, but he has 34 felony convictions. That is an indictment of our country.
Yes, it is. His vice presidential nominee had another dig at President-to-be Harris, and he said that what has she done for the last 20 years but lived off the government dole?
See,
there's another dig. And
wow,
we always have to understand that they're speaking to a specific audience. My brain was hurting as you were going through that litany, and it always comes back to me where we ask these folks who have all of these ideas, what are you afraid of? And I know the answer.
Yes.
They're afraid that they're not going to be in charge anymore. They're afraid that they're not going to be able to make decisions for all of us. And I think that's what it really boils down to, that they know that their time on the top of the hill, or whatever you want to call it, is limited because folks are not climbing that hill, but leveling that ground so that we all have a chance. And that scares them more than anything. We've talked about it at this
They
table.
stormed the Capitol. They were so annoyed and afraid.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We talk about it at this table often, often, often. They're afraid that they're going to be treated the way they've treated people for the centuries that this young country, and we've talked again that this is a very young country, and that we're going through a lot of things that older countries went through over time, but everything seems to be encapsulated and moving faster than ever. Yes, Trump's Christian nationalism would mean the end to America as we know it.
If we allow it.
If we allow
That's why
it.
we need this revival of
we allow
intellect.
it.
We need this
Yes.
revival of compassion. If we have this revival of humanism where we see goodness in people and see goodness in ourselves and see potential and work toward that, instead of just always trying to exclude someone or knock people down or tell them they can't come in, or if we will have this renewal of Erasmus in the 1500s, his humanism, I think, saved Christianity. And we need this revival of humanism.
And we've got to talk about it in the church.
Yes.
We've got to make
Because
it be
if all we're
loud
doing is
about
we're
it.
trying to revive dogmas and doctrines and prejudices, then this is what we have.
Yeah.
Yep. I love that. We need a revival. We need a revival. We need to speak out. We need to speak out about what we are seeing and how that is just totally, totally inappropriate, wrong. We need to act in love. We need to act in love. And the biggest part of this revival is we need to vote. We gotta vote.
time.
We gotta vote. We can't be lazy about it. Oh, somebody else will take care of it. Oh, I'm busy that day. We gotta do it.
County Agricultural Commissioner. Everything.
Vote.
Yes.
Anything that this man touch ends
In disaster and
in
disgrace.
disaster and in disgrace. And I think that his concept, I can rebuild it to be better and greater. There's no rebuilding anything once he puts his hand on it. I'm sorry, it's just not.
Yes.
I mean, that we survived his previous presidency is a miracle within itself.
Some did.
And that some didn't. And this is just a continue, to me, it's just a distraction. Let me tell everyone what they should be afraid of and why you should vote for me. And the very thing that you're afraid of is you.
Yep.
Is he just still starring in his own reality show in his head? And this is just
I think so.
trying to get ratings?
And this is, I mean, as much, and I'm going to use this language, as much ouch language that he has used, everybody should call him. And that ouch language is when you say something that's so offensive, you say ouch.
Ouch.
That's what the national cry needs to be, is ouch. Every time we hear anything referencing this man, it needs to be ouch. That's unacceptable. That's not appropriate, and you don't get away with
Grab
it.
him by the crotch didn't disqualify. How did he have a campaign the next day?
Exactly. But it needs to be we need to be reminded as a nation, we are an ouch nation. We call this crap out. And we call it out by voting. We call it out by encouraging people to vote. We call it out by encouraging people to get educated about what's on the ballot and who's on the ballot, not just who, but what they're representing on the ballot, and get out and vote. This is just more, for me, this is something that keeps me up at night, if you will. It's like, oh my God, is this really a possibility? And as you said, it's not a possibility as long as I do my part in contributing to not making it happen.
That's right.
And I think that's the call to action that we all need to be reminded of. We have a role in this. We can't step back from our role in this. We got to step up and we have to get out. That's our call to action. Get out and vote. Educate, vote, and vote as much as you can, and all these things that are coming up.
Yep.
Do you remember 1993, maybe? It was in the 90s. And he testified before Congress.
I saw the thing the other day.
This is in the 90s. I think it's 93. And it's about casinos. He was trying to get permits to build something, and they didn't want to do it or whatever. And so he brings up casinos, and he's like, but you're giving these permits to these casinos, and they don't even look Indian. How people look and judging people by their appearance, and if you're Indian enough or dark enough or light enough, blah, blah, blah. He was doing that shtick in the 90s. And a senator called him out in the committee, and he was very disrespectful to the senator, of course, blah, blah, blah. But it was just like, this is his lifelong shtick. So it's not as if who did he sneak up from? This has been his dog and pony show since day one. And so, well, you can't blame, his father was, Klansman or whatever, but, you don't carry your father's sin. He does.
Yep.
He's amped it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, he done put it to another
and you
level.
grow up and you let it go, man.
So, yeah, he can say whatever. But if we have a renewal, a revival, a growing up,
Yep.
where we just don't fall for that, and where the language of hate and fear and division is not appealing to us, and we really want to work on solutions and make things better for everybody, the best possible world for every person, that's the revival, that's the renewal, that's the salvation, and it's all completely in our the kingdom of God is in our hands. It's completely in our hands. And those hands need to go to voting booth, and those hands need to volunteer, and those hands need to reach into our pockets and give money to the right things. It's in our hands. And so whatever happens, it really is on us right now. And we need to take that seriously and respond to the need.
Yes.
Well, that's today with the Queer God Squad. We want to thank you for joining us. We're here daily at 3 p.m. to have some fun and to discuss what our LGBTQ plus community is talking about.
Sunshine Cathedral is the world's largest progressive queer church. Progressive, queer, and God are words that naturally should go together. And we are all in this together. Remember that.
You are God's miracle, not God's mistake.
Until next time, we are the Queer God Squad. Goodbye.